Hey everybody, it's Ron Ipach and welcome to another edition of the Exit Lane podcast. On the screen with me here is my partner in crime, Gerry. Frank.
How's everybody doing today?
We're going to be talking about what it's going to take to retire in this business, and more importantly, the number that you need to be able to meet. So that's going to be the topic of today, is really coming up with an idea of what you want to get from your business and what you want your retired life to be. But before we jump into this, I want to make sure that you guys are enjoying these podcasts, and if you have any comments, have any questions, if you like what you're seeing, please do us a favor, give a thumbs up, like, subscribe, make comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, when you subscribe, there's like a little bell there. Click that icon, and that will alert you when these podcasts come out. Okay, so enough of that commercial and into today's podcast. So this actually was Gerry's idea, okay, because Gerry is the consummate planner. I'm more of the, hey, the wind changes direction, I'm heading a totally different direction. So I know some of you guys are going to be like me and some of you guys are going to be like Gerry, but when we're talking about, winding down the business or cranking up the business so that we can sell it so we can wind down our life, it's probably not a bad idea to know exactly what you're going to need to get out of the business, what you're going to need to have in whatever investments you have, and maybe a little idea of what you're going to be doing after you're retired. So since I'm not the planner, I'm going to let Gerry handle this one because having just sold his shop, he already had his plan in mind. So he's going to kind of take you through the steps he did when he was considering selling the shop. So Gerry, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so I remember, like years ago hearing about this book, and I don't remember if the book was the number, the magic number, anything like that, but basically it was around trying to figure out what your number was, right? How much money do I need to retire? And I always thought, I've got plenty of time for that. We'll get around to that sometime. And I've done a decent job, as probably many of you, maybe contributing. You have been contributing to your retirement account, I hope. But I've been a pretty decent job at doing that. And, every year Social Security sends me that little email that says, hey, check what you're going to get, and it's never enough. But as I began to considering selling the shop, one of really the main income streams, I decided I need to take a better look at this to try to see, because once I sign that paper, the sold paper, and they stamp it sold, there's no going back. So I just thought I'd start doing some calculations, and I just would hopefully this will be helpful to you, whether you are expecting to sell your shop in the upcoming year, or maybe it's 5-10 years from now. I still think having a direction, a plan is always beneficial. So I would start with, I wrote down, describe your ideal life. Now I'm not talking here about your storybook fantasy. I want to live in Malibu Beach on, overlooking the ocean. No, let's talk about your ideal life, what you would like to do after you sell the shop and you retire. So, where are you going to live? I know for me it was always a dream to have a house on the lake. So recently we bought a condo on the lake, which has been awesome. But where are you going to live? Are you going to have one home, two homes? What is that going to look like? What are you going to do with your time? This was a big one, and it should be a big one for you. I know a lot of folks, when they retire, your business, your shop, I was a shop owner for 37 years. It becomes like what you do every day, a sense of purpose, and you kind of lose your way in life if you don't have some plans. So today we're not just talking about having a money goal, but also what your ideal life looks like in terms of time. What are you going to do? What hobbies are you going to take up? Anything like that. So I think that's important as well.
I think that's going to be really difficult for a lot of people to do it because they can't envision not going to the shop every single day. I mean, when you think about it, and Gerry, and you know this, having gone to the shop day after day for 30 plus years. And then, well, you had a little different situation where you weren't in the shop, all the time. You were able to get yourself out of the shop. But for many shop owners that are going to the shop every single day, that day that they don't have to go to the shop, now they sit around and wonder, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And it happens with so many people when they retire. They're not even just from selling a business, but they just flat out retire, and now they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs, and they have no earthly idea what the heck they're going to do. And I think it robs several really good, productive years out of somebody's life because they just sit around and don't know what to do. So I think this is a really good exercise, as painful as it may be, to figure out what you want to do when you're not going to the shop every day.
Yeah, and I think it was really weird, not going to the shop. That to me, I always had some monumental days, like, the last day of the month, we'd get all the paperwork done. You'd print those reports, all of that stuff. It's like, it's weird. An alarm went off on my phone to make sure I did the end of the month reports, and it's like, I don't have any end of the month reports to do. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. So think about that. What are you going to do with your time? I want you to think about that before that day potentially comes. We'll talk for a moment about the money side of things. And, how much money will you need? It's really difficult to say that. I sat down, with my wife, and we kind of put together just a budget. We took a look at, the things that you normally pay your bills with, your household bills, if you have rent or a mortgage or anything like that, your utilities. Put it down on paper. Again, we're not trying to get a solid to the penny number. We're just trying to get an idea. Anything, if you've got car payments, anything like that, you need to we're reverse engineering a budget. Some of the things for us is fun. Fun. What are we going to do with our free time, but our fun stuff? Ron, I know you like to go out with your wife for dinner. I do the same. We like to go up probably 3 times a week. So I got to put that into the budget, because that's not going to change. Unfortunately, I love to eat, so we like to go out and spend time together and do those types of things. We like to go golfing. So again, I want to kind of write that down in the summer months, but, come up with a budget, kind of what you expect to spend. I know a rule of thumb I saw somewhere was you'll probably spend about 80% of that. So I kind of use that. I know I'm not going to be driving as much. You're not driving to the shop every day. Usually when we go to the shop, you're going out for lunch a lot more. A lot of different expenses maybe come up as you're working at the shop. That'll maybe go away a little bit in your later years.
Let me just jump in here real quick, and because many of you guys run your car payment through the shop. And don't forget, when the shop ain't there, guess who's paying that bill again? You got to put that back on your personal budget because the shop's not paying for it anymore. And your cell phone bills and all the other stuff that you're running through the shop right now.
Yeah. So you have to really look at that. That's a great point. It felt really weird. My daughter was in town a couple of weeks ago, and I actually had to go somewhere and pay to have her brakes repaired. Weird feeling, so some of those things that really weren't in the budget maybe before. My financial advisor, when we were looking at this, and it was important to me that we had, money to do the things we want to do. And he described it as usually retirement gets into 3 separate areas. There's the go-go years, is what he said. And I'm not talking about go-go dancing, Ron, so don't get yourself all worked up. I'm talking about the years that you want to do stuff. You want to travel. You want to do those things, when you're young. And then there's the slow go years, maybe as you age a little bit. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe that's in your 70s or whatever, where you're maybe not as active as you once were. And then, maybe when you're up there in your years, there's kind of the no-go years where you spend most of your time, hopefully, at home. But we kind of designed it like that, right? We looked at that retirement pool, if you will, that budget, and kind of broke it down into thirds because you want to be able to live while you can. So those were the go-go years. But again, we're trying to put together a budget. So we talked about, how much money will you spend? And I would do this on a monthly basis, try to calculate that out. I also calculated in, desired possessions. Maybe that's a wrong term, but, do you need a new car? It ain't going to last you forever. If you're going to buy a new vehicle, make sure you enter that into it. I bought a boat. I wanted to take up boating as a hobby. So that's something that we've wanted for a long time. So again, we had to kind of calculate that and all the expenses that go into it. As any of you boaters know, bank on another 1,000. Isn't that what it's short for?
The happiest days are the day you buy the boat and the day you sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. So by now, you should have a number. This is what my monthly nut is, if you will. So again, we're trying to work for how much do I need to retire. The other thing that you want to think about is depending on your age, some folks I see retire when they're 40, 50. I'm 62. So we're trying to project how long we live. And boy, that's a moving number. Prior to this call, I researched something that said I figured 85. Longevity kind of runs in my family. Ron, how long did you tell me you expected to live?
120 is my goal.
120. Well, you better figure that out. You better take that number, make it annually, subtract where you're at, divide it by the number of years you expect. Again, we're just trying to plan this out. There's no exact science to it. So you should have some kind of number now, right? You're going to take kind of what you think you're going to need, and then you're going to multiply that times how long you plan on being around. Where's the money going to come from, I guess, is the next calculation that you want to think about. So the sale of the shop is probably your biggest asset. I want you to hear that. For most of you, the sale of your business, it's your life's work, and that's your biggest asset. Of course, homes and those types of things all factor into that, but you want to make sure you get it right and that you get maximum money for your shop. If you're selling the real estate, whatever that might be, that whole nest egg is a big part of your retirement. I've always said it time and time again, a lot of folks that maybe work for a large union company or you work for a big company, they're always contributing to your retirement count and those types of things. Well, my contribution anyways has been into the business. That was that big part of my severance pay or my retirement account as time went on. So you got to think about that. That's one of your biggest assets, and you want to make sure you get it right. Aside from that, maybe you've got some other assets, rental properties, things like that. You've been contributing hopefully to your 401k, that retirement nest eggs, if you will. Of course, you can figure in that little teeny bit that Social Security is going to give you if it's still around, and any additional income if you plan to work. So what we're trying to do is just kind of come up with a plan. I would strongly suggest that you meet with your financial advisor. If you don't have a financial advisor, look into getting one. Somebody that you trust, usually from a referral, maybe a friend, something like that. I'm blessed. My brother's a financial advisor, so I feel like he'd give me some sound advice. And they have all these fancy whiz-bang spreadsheets, kind of where you're at. They calculate inflation rate. They calculate expected insurance, which is health insurance is a big part of that, because health insurance problem until you reach your retirement years, 65, I think you can get the government to help a little bit with that. But until that happens, health insurance can get pretty expensive. So you got to make sure that you're well insured. But they can figure all of that out for you and see according to their calculations if they feel you have enough to make it to the finish line. If you don't, maybe your business has enough, you've already reached that number, right? Which is awesome. You calculate the number, I'm already there, I'm working because I want to, not because I have to. That's a wonderful place to be. Maybe you find that you got a ways to go. You need to work on your business. Profitability isn't what it needs to be. You need to increase that net profit. I need to add $500,000 onto my nest egg in the next 10 years. How do you do it? Your business is your best way to get that done. So maybe you need some help in getting there. But the earlier you do this exercise, the better. I think it's really important to have that number, have that target to go for, and start putting a plan in place to get there.
I think if you've been watching our Exit Lane podcasts in order, so the last one we did, we talked about coming up with a rough number of what your shop is worth. Now, and if you haven't watched that episode, or if you haven't done the work that we talked about on it, make sure you go back and do that, because what you want is an accurate number that your shop is actually worth, so that you can plug that in. So when you do meet with your financial advisor or something like that, you got a real number to toss in. Inside our Facebook page, I hear this all the time. There's just like a set. Well, I've always hear the rule of thumb is 5 times net or 3 times net. It's like, well, there is no rule of thumb. I mean, every business is going to be totally different, and so that's why I want to make sure what your number is for your business, what it's actually worth, what you feel it's worth, so that you can plug that in when you do meet with a financial advisor, or if you're going to do this yourself, so you know exactly what you need to get from your business. And if it's not there, well, that's where hell, just get in touch with Gerry and I, and let us figure out a way how to get your shop to that point, because really it's a multiple of your net income, and that net income, that multiple is a sliding scale depending on the health of your business and how the business runs and how much you're involved in it or not involved in the business. And there's all these different things. So if you're not quite where you need to be, you need to start to work on that right now. Now, for those of you that aren't quite ready to sell yet, you might be thinking, well, I don't really need to do this. Let me give you my 2 cents on this, and take it for what it's worth. Do the numbers anyway, because at some point somebody's going to walk through your door and they're going to say, I want to buy your business. And maybe you just had a really crappy day, a crappy week or something like that. And you're like, selling this thing is in the cards right now, perfect time, perfect place. Knowing what your business is worth and knowing what you need to get from that business is like having the keys to having a very comfortable retirement or an oh shit retirement. What did I just do? I got rid of the goose that was laying the golden egg. The problem was I didn't get enough for the goose to carry me through, and you're going to wind up being a greeter at Walmart because you just didn't plan this thing out. So, again, take it for what it's worth. But I think this is time very, very, very well spent. And this is not a time for doing a swag. That's that scientific wild ass guess. How much money am I going to need? Or what do I need to be able to sell my business for? You have to plan. I'm not that planner. Okay. My wife happens to be that planner. So we know what our number is. And Gerry kind of mentioned it before. We knew what our number was years ago because my wife forced me to go through it. We did all that. So we knew what our number was. But then we started realizing, hey, wait a second, we're going to live to 120. So we redid our number based on living to 120 years old. Now you may think, oh, 120, no way. Hey, that's your story, not mine. My story is I'm getting 120. So I'm planning for 120. So it totally changed what that number needs to be able to be. So when it comes time to selling the businesses, my wife, I have our business and my wife has her own business. So we need to know exactly what those things are going to be worth and how much money we need to have in a bank so we can be comfortable, because you all have worked entirely too hard to sell for cheap. And we'd hate to see that happen. So that's really what we're trying to do here. So, reach out to Gerry or myself if you want to really dive into the business and do a little bit more planning, figuring out how do we make this business more valuable so that when the time comes, we're getting top dollar for it, and we're attracting the best buyers that have the money. The one thing you didn't talk about in this, Gerry, is if you sell the business and you're selling it and you're the bank, you've got that drip of an income coming in instead of that lump sum sitting in the bank, and you have to, that drip is not a guaranteed drip. We've seen this. Gerry and I have been coaching, thousands of clients over the past 20 some years. And we've seen more than our fair share of shop owners getting their shop back because they played the bank. The guy didn't make it. They wound up with the shop again, and they had to jump right back in it. And we'd hate to see that happen too. So that's also part of the preparations you need to have when you go through this. So, Gerry, any final words before we wrap this up? I know we went a little long on today, but I want to make sure that we get as much information packed into these podcasts as possible.
Yeah, no. So what we shared with you today is get the number, so at least you know where you're going. And I'm going to end with that quote I jotted down here from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So let's make sure you end up exactly where you want to be.
And with that, we'll see you on the next episode of the Exit Lane. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.